There is a lot of messages coming through for a very specific collective here, and this is a collective who's very much connected to the divine feminine energy, but this is not just divine feminine energy in a mainstream way of understanding, but we're going to dive deep into what I mean by this, okay? Because the moment I saw this wisdom of divine feminine with number 9, this is very important actually in this reading, and with the 2 of Cups and the 3 of Cups, this is like overflowing energy of divine feminine, right? And what I immediately was taken to was this concept of 𝓑𝓗𝓴, which we will explain because this is like a Vedic way of understanding the full spectrum of divine feminine itself, right? This energy of what divine feminine kind of fragments into. And we're trying to understand the fragments so we can understand the whole, or we're trying to understand the sum of the parts, and then to understand the whole in a sense. So in this Vedic tradition, divine feminine expresses herself through the 𝓑𝓗𝓴, as I said, and these are basically like the 9 emotional flavors, you could say, or like these tones of consciousness, the way divine feminine expresses herself, right? These are like felt tones, not just, I guess we can say like the qualia of just being a divine feminine. So these are almost like, these aren't exactly like moods or vibes. These are exactly like the 9, like a primal texture through which consciousness experiences itself as form. Okay, so these are like these emotional structure of being a human as well, and they are divine feminine's way of kind of saying this is how God tastes itself when it becomes a person or it comes into form. Okay, this is kind of how I understand it, and it's coming through in this way for you specifically in this reading, because this is what's awakening inside of you, this realization that emotions are very connected to your soul's evolution here on this reality, and relationships for you are one of the main factors of how you are evolving through this lifetime here as the human vessel that you have incarnated as. Okay, and it's like these are like interfaces of like evolutionary templates for you, like relationships itself, and these are very like qualitative experiences through which your soul is learning the fullness of being a human right now in this reality. Okay, and for you, what's coming through right away is like you have not only lived one lifetime, but you have lived many lifetimes. And also, if you look back to your story, your life probably has moved in a very non-linear way, like it moves in a quantum way where it is very non-linear. Okay, so in your entire phases of your life might feel very completely like different, as in every phase that you've gone through, because we go through these like phases and seasons in our life, so they could have felt so different where it almost felt like it was a different incarnations, and they can be categorized almost with like some sense of like different textures and different emotions that you felt in this phase, but then in this phase you had activated a whole different level of textures of emotions and qualitative experiences as a human, and then in another phase very different. So it was almost like this quantum jump, and then they would go into these higher octaves as you moved along in this progression of these levels of consciousness that you experience in these phases of your life. Let's say you maybe have experienced yourself being a very naive person, and then there's this version of you now who's a very wise person, right? And then there was this person or version of you who was so hurt and so in this feeling of victimization, and now there's this version of you who is so expansive and in residing in this higher wisdom that, you know, your experiences go beyond the duality experience itself. Like, I'm just giving an example, but maybe there was, you know, another example would be like maybe a version of you who was so quiet and who was so silent because they had been quieted and they had, kind of been oppressed in a sense. But then there's this version of you who is now really social and really just so free in speaking what they want, what they desire, just in general sense. And then we can give another example of someone being so isolated in one phase, and then another phase where you're just in awe of the world and wanting to really collaborate and be in relationship with the world and all of that kind of sense, right? And I'm giving all of these examples or saying all of these things because your consciousness and the way your soul wants to evolve is with these contrasting energies, right? And it's in a way where it wants to understand both sides and the both spectrum, and then relate it in a very non-dual way to it. And there are all these phases that had these opposite spectrums, so to say. They all had this very different flavor of consciousness running through it, and which is because I think if you think about it, there are a lot of people in the older paradigm, or people who reside in these older paradigms and live from these lower perspectives. They don't get to experience so many spectrums of emotions or consciousness or phases of life. They stay in one rasa, or that emotional texture, their whole life, like this one emotional archetype, one identity flavor, one bandwidth of consciousness, one psychological bandwidth, right? And they very much fear the unknown. They avoid this deeper emotional textures. And this is also in many feminine archetypes, this is shown because the feminine has so many sides to her. She's very graceful yet very poised, or she's very graceful and poised yet very fierce and powerful. She can be this beautiful art, but then she can also turn into Kali Ma, or she can also be this witch who is no care in the world what you think she looks like to you, right? And this archetype of just such contrasting energies, but at the same time they evolve from this one source of divine feminine expression. And obviously there are these kind of archetypes in the divine masculine as well, but divine feminine has this very materialized texture to her that the divine masculine doesn't, because divine feminine, actually we don't have to go into all of that, but for you here, what's important is that you are not resisting the disorientation of just stepping into a whole new inner landscape, basically, right? But you also incarnated here to taste that full spectrum of being a human and experiencing it in a really raw form. So your soul is kind of studying consciousness, almost in a, I can think of it as a scientist studying particles or atoms. But instead of using those tools, you're using emotions, connections, relationships, and heartbreaks within the relationship, then joy within that relationship, then the bonding, the deep bond within that relationship, friendship, love, loss, longing, the separation, then merging again, all of these emotions, every emotional experience you've had was this lab for you. Oh my gosh. Then we have Shiva. Wow, we're gonna actually get into this, but let me finish what I was saying. Basically this lab, or this even a classroom for you, and every relationship almost became this portal for you, right? So all these phases of life that you've gone through was basically your consciousness just trying to experience itself through you, through all of these emotions and these spectrums of emotions, right? So now you have come to this point. And we're talking about consciousness, and I've used the word consciousness so much here in this reading because Shiva wanted to come through. And Shiva is, again, he has so many spectrums, and he's known as so many things. But one of the main anchoring thing of Shiva is that Shiva is actually the divine masculine and feminine amalgamated together. If you call him any other name, which I think it's Shav or Shiv. If you just say that, then that is the divine masculine form, or the incarnation of Shiva himself, or itself, the nothingness itself, that is basically Shiva. because Shiva again is a duality amalgamated together. So then we can get very abstract and say that Shiva is everything and nothing together, right? It's a full spectrum of everything and nothing together. And I love that this card came out, because this reading itself is a very abstract reading for a very specific collective, and you are pretty rare in this community. If you found this kind of material and content, let me tell you, you are pretty rare. Okay. And I don't mean that like nobody like you exists and you're gonna be an isolated being here in this earth, but it's pretty rare to find people like this and who connect to this kind of material, especially in tarot community here on YouTube. Okay, which is why I'm saying that. But you have this very beautiful understanding, and Two of Cups and Shiva coming out, that is so beautiful. Even the Three of Cups, because Three of Cups basically is showing the Parvati Shiva or Shakti Shiva and Ganesha, the creation of them, which is essentially coming from Ma Parvati herself, because she's the one who created Ganesha and gave the structure to this being, but Shiva is the one who put life or consciousness into him, right? And I would like to go deeper into that, but not for this reading, because I want to focus more on how this is playing out in your life. Because the Two of Cups, Three of Cups are not necessarily like coming out as soulmates or anything in that romantic sense. They're more this like mirrors of like this qualia that you experience, right? They are these containers where you're getting to experience this 9 rasas in their purest form of the divine feminine, which is, I think the 9 rasas are like devotion, tenderness, longing, protection. What else? It's playfulness, it's courage, it's trust, it's expansion, it's surrender. It's all of these things. I don't know if it's exactly these words, but it's all of these things, right? And the people now entering your life are going to be activating this next emotional flavors your soul is meant to taste. And in this one, it's going to be more so like it's going to reflect the parts of you that were very dormant until now, because your consciousness had not reached that flavor, that like profile of that flavor within you yet. Okay, so it's like this, you are just like stepping into this like relational space where this divine feminine now is going to be expressed as not just like one emotion itself, as an isolated emotion itself, like if not just like as a softness, or not just as like this truth you embody, or not just as like this fierceness, but it's almost like you're learning to feel it as an embodiment within you in all spectrums, and have that embodied within you, because you're learning to feel people clearly as well. And what I mean by this is like you are going to a whole nother level now to be able to sense people clearly, to be able to sense their inner world clearly, to be able to experience empathy in a whole different octave. Like if you connect with the archetype of being a star seed or empath or light worker in any way, then you'll be able to experience those emotions without like being absorbed all of it, but rather because you already have it within you, you're able to pinpoint that emotion, right? So to read that emotional and energetic states as though they're languages that you've already like kind of built this system around, like you already have those neural pathways connected within you, so you don't have to like try and build a whole new experience to understand what's going on. You already have those pathways built within you, within your consciousness, so that you're able to pinpoint that, and you're able to connect to people and relate to people from that like a level of completely embodying all of these 9 rasas and 9 way of experiencing the emotional texture as a human. And your relationship now become like this not necessarily laboratory, but it's this like safe space now where all these next level of your consciousness can awaken, all your gifts that can awaken, because you've embodied all of this spectrum of you and way of being human within you. Okay, I hope all of this is making sense. I realize this is pretty abstract, but it's a very important and it's a really fun message, I have to say, because it's really fun for me to channel this right now. So let's get some more cards from this deck and go a little deeper into what wants to come through. Like there's almost this feeling of meta as well, like realizing that you are, oh my gosh, we have Atman. And the moment I said meta, these eyes, right? Like there are just so many higher perspectives of you. Like there's a you, then there's a one you that is consciously experiencing reality, then there's you that is consciously analyzing the one that is consciously experiencing the reality, then there's a you that is analyzing the one that is analyzing all of these yous, and then there's one who's analyzing all of this and creating harmony within all of this and seeing from a higher perspective all of these and all of their experiences. And there's the Atman, the source that you come from, and all of that kind of sort, right? These meta level of consciousness is what you're tapping into, and you're going to be able to, again, with the Shiva here, he is in the form of Nataraja, which basically, if we don't go too deep into it and kind of shorten it up, he is also like the lord or the god of the rhythm, or the seasons and the phases, the cycles, right? The birth, creation, sustainability, all of that, right? All of that together, he is embodiment of that. So then bringing these two cards together, it's almost like you're able to embody all these 9 dimensions of you, and there's specifically the 9 coming through. So the 9th dimension, even if we talk about that, there is that overlay, that message is coming through. Actually, if we go into physics and understand this in a physical or in quantum physics way, not that I'm an expert at this, but with the knowledge that I have, if we kind of go into quantum physics, there is that concept of, or the theory of, like, you know, particles that are not in like this one fixed state until they're measured, and they exist as these like probabilities, right? So 9th dimensional perspective kind of functions in that way, but for experience itself, it has not completed that experience of being completely embodied vessel. So it's like the 9th dimensional is realizing all of that is you in all of these other dimensions, is essentially a whole harmonic series rather than one thing at a time, rather than like these isolated things at a specific time or at a specific space-time continuum. Like all of these are this stacked things, or rather than stacked, it's a very harmonious things that are playing together, that are working together, and it is the state of integration where all these possible variations of experience exist simultaneously, and it's not in a sequential way, right? So in these lower dimensional experience, like everyday human consciousness or 3D level of consciousness, emotions and time and these experiences are so linear, right? So you can move from joy to grief to confusion to love, right? One after another, and you have to experience one emotion at a time. But again, like I said, you're moving to that 9th dimensional consciousness of emotions and experiencing emotions, okay? And for a lot of you, or for each and one of you, it's going to materialize or be experienced in a different way, but that is this essence of the message that is wanting to come through. So my battery is about to die. I have to kind of hurry up and get the other cards. So let's see what wants to be confirmed. Oh my gosh, look at the card we have. Possibilities. That is so crazy. We literally have possibilities. And do you see how there are like literally hands from coming out from all different angles? I love that. And then we have the Saturn on top, which basically is a lord of restriction and time, right? So there's no restriction of time anymore for you. And again, it's going to express itself in so many different ways for you. We have the journey. Oh my gosh. And there's this person almost like a clock moving through time. But again, this is this is going to be so clear to you that you're experiencing very non-linear experience in this reality, and you're experiencing emotions from a very non-linear way. And I'm telling you, this is about to be so magical for you, and your relationships are about to be so magical because you are experiencing it from this ninth dimensional way. And I wish I could go a little more deeper into that, but maybe next time, maybe when this comes out again and it works out with divine will as well. But yeah, that is the message that is coming through. I am so excited for you to experience this non-linear way of connecting to other people and your emotions, and just being a human and experiencing the spectrum of just being a human and experiencing the qualia of it all. So thank you so much for tuning into this reading. It's been an absolute delight channeling this for you, and now I'll see you in another reading. Namaste.